Hey everybody, it's Swank Ivy, and I'm here to bring you another Letters to an Asexual. This is number 44, and it feels like I've been away from doing Letters to an Asexual for a really long time, but that could be partly because my last video, which was about Maggie and me, was recorded a good deal before I actually posted it, and also that one and a couple of the ones before it were not me reading my hate mail, so it just seems like it's been forever since this is the kind of video that I made. I'm not going to bore you too much with life updates. I kind of hate it when YouTube people do a lot of that. Probably their fan base cares. I don't know if you guys really care that much about me personally. I mean, some of you seem to, but I don't really like it when the content that I came for, I have to wait through like 10 minutes of the person rambling about their update schedule, or why they couldn't make a video today, or when they think they're gonna post this video while I'm watching. I don't know, I'm just venting my pet peeves because I just don't really care about that. Maybe some people do. Anyway, but I did want to let some of you know who have been following my life updates and stuff that I mentioned in one of my previous videos that I was told my office where I had worked for over 10 years was closing, so I had to find a new job, and the good news is I did find a new job. So I started a week ago as I'm making this video, and it's a very similar job, so there's not really anything all that exciting to tell you guys about that's different. I'm supporting another team of engineers in doing their administrative and editing work, and I'm also going to be learning some CAD stuff. I'm going to learn how to add some minor stuff to plans and pavement markings and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting, very different from my usual background, but I think I'll pick it up. This is also kind of weird, but I've taken some driving lessons, which, I'm almost 40 and I don't have a driver's license. So it's a big change for me. I'm going to try to get a driver's license. I don't really know if I'm going to be able to make that happen, because now my job is full-time, which is a big change from my part-time job. And it's hard to find time to do anything extensive like that, but I'm going to try to take a couple more lessons and see if I can find a way to practice. I don't really have too many pals with cars around here, but that's a goal of mine, just maybe so that I don't have to ride the bus for more than 2 hours a day to get to my job. Well, I mean, there and back, it's like I spend more than 2 hours a day on a bus. But I get to have more reading time, so that's fun. I've been doing a lot of creative stuff with music and art, so some of you guys know that I really like Steven Universe, so I've been doing some ukulele covers and have a separate blog now where I've been posting a lot of my art and stuff. So if any of you guys are into that, let me know and I'll give you the information that's not really connected publicly to most of my stuff. But I just didn't want to annoy too many people who signed up for the asexuality stuff with like all this cartoon stuff, so just knowing me, you're gonna have to deal with a little bit of it, but I'm trying not to be overwhelming with it. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get into reading you the letter. I've been doing Letters to an Asexual for a really long time. I've been doing asexuality related stuff for a very long time, so I feel like there's not a whole lot of new ground to cover. So everything that I read probably has some similarities to something that I've done in the past, so I'm sure that there are elements of this that are similar to previous videos or previous essays I've written, but the topic of this one is going to focus on why some people seem to think that if you don't really have a libido or you don't really enjoy masturbation or sexual activity, that is defined as a disorder. And I feel like some of the points in this conversation that I had with a detractor who, was not rude, but I felt like they were wrong and misguided, I think, I've addressed some of these things before, but they might be slightly different angles that I haven't shared before. So let's just see what you guys think of this one. So for Letters to an Asexual, number 44, I got these comments on a YouTube video. So this person opens with this. I don't understand how not experiencing sexual arousal can be considered an orientation and not a neurological issue. It's one thing to say you don't experience sexual attraction, but not experiencing sexual arousal at all is an entirely different thing. If your anatomy is working, then there must be a lack of connection between the physical stimuli and the pleasure centers in the brain. It seems like a medical issue to me. So I replied and said, people who say they're not experiencing arousal aren't generally saying their genitals don't work. They're not saying they actively attempt to get aroused through physically stimulating themselves and nothing happens. In the asexual community, I've mostly just seen non-libidoist people say nothing/nobody makes them horny, and masturbation doesn't really occur to them as something interesting to do. And if they do self-stimulate, sometimes they just find it boring or not worth the effort. So the person replies with this: if they find it boring, then that means they tried stimulating themselves and nothing happened. Most people find major surges of pleasure anything but boring, so there must be an issue with the brain's ability to process pleasure stimuli in asexuals. I'm just saying I think we should be looking more into this as a medical condition that might be treatable. And I said this: no, that's just projecting. Do some people find a food tasty and still not make eating it a priority? Yep. Do some people get adrenaline rushes on roller coasters and then not feel compelled to pursue the rides? Yep. People value different things, even if when you experience it, you can't personally imagine not wanting to pursue more of it. It's common to believe something is wrong with people who aren't like you, though, I guess. It's what motivated diagnosing gay people with a disorder. For the record, we should be looking at this medically, though, is not at all a new idea. We've been treated like we have a physical or mental illness forever. When you say most people find surges of pleasure compelling, you're just going to have to understand that we're not most people. We're supposedly 1% of the population, and not all of us are even non-libidoist. And according to studies, asexual people masturbate in the same percentages as the general population. The person replied with this: it's just hard to accept that some people don't experience one of the fundamental instincts of being human without suffering some kind of consequence to their general health and well-being. Asexuals who masturbate, autosexuals, I can definitely see as an orientation. To me, the main issue is not about where the libido is directed, self, same-sex, or opposite sex, but that any exists at all. I hope we'll be able to figure out why it doesn't exist in some people. I said this: well, when you say it's hard to accept, you're making it about you. If you can't accept it, or just have a hard time with it, believe me, we're used to hearing comments like yours, but I think everyone will be happier if you don't insist on trying to encourage fixes for people who don't feel broken. Asking us to tolerate intrusive inquiries/modifications to our bodies and minds to make us more like others sounds more motivated by others' discomfort over us, not our well-being. And the person says this: wait, so if someone is born with a deficit of some kind, we should just encourage them to accept their situation as is instead of trying to find solutions? If someone is born with difficulty walking, we shouldn't encourage physical therapy? If someone has trouble speaking, we shouldn't encourage speech therapy? Not experiencing sexual arousal is a pretty big deal, even if it might not seem that way to people who don't feel it. I said this: don't try to apply being born with a deficit to your discussion here, especially since you're not making a distinction between can't and doesn't. People who try to experience arousal and can't can choose to pursue intervention if they want to. But I've been talking about not valuing arousal or not finding it compelling, which is the case for most asexual people who don't have an interest in masturbation or sex. It's not a disorder to not find a particular experience appealing. And the person says this, also, I mean hard to accept from a scientific and medical viewpoint, not an emotional one. Let me rephrase. Because sexual arousal is an important part of the body's functions, I wonder if a lack of it doesn't have serious physiological or psychological consequences of some kind. Maybe the answer is no. I'm not saying that's not possible, but maybe we should be more serious about the issue instead of chalking it up to intolerance. And I said this. This is my last comment. Viewing it as a medical problem has been the norm all along, and I think you're ignoring that. It's not as if we're blithely unaware that people consider our orientation more likely to be a physical or mental problem than to be an orientation, so encouraging us to consider the possibility is a repetition of the status quo, not a new idea. Asexuality is now mentioned as an exception in the DSM-5 and is not a medical condition. It has been studied by sex experts and professionals. That's where our conversation ended, and I don't know if it's because the person stopped paying attention or if I, for some reason, just stopped recording the conversation there. I think it just probably just fell off because the person stopped responding to me. I will say that, it is certainly possible that I think the disorder is called something like anhedonia, where you can't experience pleasure. That exists. There are neurological conditions that can cause people to not feel pleasure. But like I said, I think anybody who's concerned about this is ignoring the fact that most of us who are happy with ourselves really had to fight to be that way. It's not like we had no idea growing up that we were supposed to feel that way and enjoy that. And it probably caused, a good deal of us to have a lot of stress about what's wrong with me when it just wasn't what everybody else just goes so wild for to us. So I don't want to downplay the fact that there are physical disorders that exist in the world that can cause people to not feel certain things, and that there can be symptoms that suggest very serious problems. There just don't seem to be any actual disorders that the only thing that we can't feel is sexual pleasure. It's just that people get so concerned about it, thinking there must be something wrong, but if that's the only thing, it's much more likely to be part of our orientation than it is to be a neurological disorder or something that needs to be studied. And I think a lot of people also downplay how stressful it is to go into great detail with a medical analysis or to spend a lot of time and money getting checked out for these things, just feeling like there has to be something wrong with me and we're going to find it. There's no established protocol for diagnosing these sorts of things, especially if it actually turns out that you're asexual and that's the only reason that it doesn't seem to feel good to you. It's really frustrating to have these conversations with people who they don't want to admit that they're coming from a point of view that this means something's wrong with you. And that's the only reason that we're asking these questions. It's also true that there are people who have disabilities and illnesses who choose not to pursue the fixes, and that is also something that I would support. It may sound kind of strange, but specifically, I might refer to the deaf community. Some of them feel like it's actually abusive to insist that a deaf person, before they have enough information to make the decision themselves, like with children, that they're kind of forced to accept implants or, a lot of therapy instead of becoming like a part of the deaf community and valuing that. It's like they act like the only thing being deaf could be is a deficit, and that's all that it is. And, I had a friend, my friend Mike, who he had a disorder where he couldn't walk. And a lot of his youth was spent, going through therapy, trying to use assisted technology and things like braces and the arm cuffs and everything to walk. And eventually he decided that nothing that of value to him was coming from these attempts to walk. He preferred to use a chair or not use anything. He used to crawl around my house, and he decided that was the lifestyle that he preferred. And, when you can't go crawling around, he would use the chair. That's totally acceptable. And even though, he probably could have found a walking solution, when he got old enough to say, Mom, I don't want to do this anymore, and I just want to, not be a person who walks, she respected that. She was a nurse, and she respected, my son doesn't want to keep trying to do this. He's made his decision, and he'd rather just be a wheelchair user and, be on his own terms. And I support those kinds of things. You don't have to be like, oh, I have to tough love you into being as much like the walking population as I can. And I feel like that's still sort of a controversial thing, but it's not like disabled people or autistic people or people who have any kind of disorder have no say in this matter. It's not like you have to push them into changing their lives to be more like the norm. And people like my commenter are always saying, but what if something's wrong with you, and what if we can fix you? What if we can make you more like us? And by doing that, they completely ignore that there is something of value to being an asexual person. There is something of value to being the way that we naturally are. And I think we really need to stop emphasizing the status quo as a society, that there's one normal, and we all really need to accept that this is the best way to be if you can be, and only start accepting that you're different from that if there's no way to be that. I absolutely don't believe that for really any situation that can be possible. So that's where I stand on that, and I also would not begrudge an asexual person who is upset by their condition, if they felt like, I really wish that I could enjoy this, and they pursued therapies to try to get to a point where they could. I would probably wonder how much of that was societal conditioning. I'm sure a lot of it would be, but it's not up to me. It's their life. And if that's something that they want to be, something they want to do, it's not for me to say, oh no, you were born to be this, and you have no say in what kind of therapies you pursue or don't pursue to be that. So that's my position. And I think my rambling has run out on this, so feel free to comment if you have something to say. I know I might have said some sort of controversial things, but ultimately it's all about acceptance and encouraging people to pursue what feels right to them. There's so many kinds of valid life experiences and identities, so you should be encouraged to find yours. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. Bye.